Welcome back to another episode of Psychocinematic. Today, my guests are Gregory Middleton and John Paino. Greg is an Emmy Award-winning director of photography, and you've probably seen his work in Game of Thrones, Watchmen, Moon Knight, you name it. John is an award-winning production designer, and you've probably seen his work on The Last of Us, The Morning Show, Big Little Lies, and so much more. But today, they are joining me to talk about their work on Netflix's new TV show, Sirens. So without further ado, here's Greg and John. Well, thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time. I wanted to start with basically where Sirens was shot. Not just like the location, but, was the home a real home, or is the exteriors a facade and then the interiors are all soundstage, that kind of thing?
The interior is completely built. It's much bigger than the location house that we found, so it had to be built. And also the location house certainly wouldn't, service us. And we also made false buildings and facades and things onto the existing house to give it what the script called for, an oligarch's billionaire's mansion on the water. And we found a great location, mostly for the fact that it felt like it was on a cliff and it had the staircase, which was fantastic. Because I started the show, I thought I would be building that staircase because that's amazing. So we found a house that would work with work. And then great piece of land in Northport, Long Island, and the staircase, which we just had to add a little bit at the bottom, but it was great.
So then that was shot in New York and not in like Rhode Island then?
No.
We built the interiors at Steiner Studios, in Brooklyn. It filled the biggest stage they have there.
It was more than 10,000 square feet.
Wow.
And it was, I don't know, what was it, Greg? 40 feet tall? It's crazy.
Something like that. It was pretty tall. The stages were, I think, 46 feet to the perms, and we built up to near 40 feet with the top of the perch. So
with that interior being built then, back when I wasn't sure if it was like a real home or not, I was curious if those pillars were there to just like symbolize, like kind of Greek architecture, or if it was actually load bearing or not.
Well, they were not really that load bearing. In spots they were, because there were sets above in certain spots, but they weren't really load bearing. And they are kind of a nod to the obvious Greek mythology, and they're based on the Temple of Delphi, actually, but with a postmodern, like Mark Graves is a postmodern architect kind of feel to it.
Gotcha. And now, Greg, I'm curious if you can speak on this. It always seems important for the communication between the director, the DP, the production and costume designer, and the colorist to make sure that the visual aesthetic is achieved at the production. But this has a very stylized and unique visual aesthetic. And so I'm just curious, was this even more important, or, it's just another day where it's like, yeah, we're just going to, figure out the colors, the diffusion, that kind of thing?
I mean, it wouldn't necessarily mean it's more important. It's always part of the process, but also it's more, I guess in this case, as you mentioned, it's a quite more stylized thing than a lot of things. And it's both has elements of naturalism, but also like a hyper reality. Like from a photographic standpoint, we want this place to be a bit aspirational, a bit mesmerizing in a certain way, because what it represents to Simone's character and for what the audience's journey should be like. It's a bit fantastical in some way, like in terms of photography. It's always very bright and sunny and lovely, and John's amazing design in terms of the color palette, very true to like the life of the area, but also photographed in a way that's a little bit too perfect in some ways and too kind of glowing always, which is like intentional, because it also leads to a certain unease because it's obviously masking and hiding some deeper truths going on. So it's not really more important than other projects, but just the choices were something a bit more extreme because of the journey we're trying to take the audience on.
We did see houses of that ilk.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
When we scouted, it is not that far off from some things. And not so much the color, but the size and the opulence. And that's your summer home, too.
Yeah, that's crazy. I was wondering where you would even begin with, researching something like this. Like, do you just have to go and study the elites? Like, can I look inside your house? Or like, how do you know what the insides look like?
No, it's out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then even like going along with that visual aesthetic, the hospital scene, like, did you guys just find a hospital that matched the visual aesthetic, or did you guys build that inside of a soundstage?
That was a built set. That was actually built into some existing offices.
Just down the hall from the production office, a similar certain spaces repurposed, and then John built like the nurse's counter and all that, and we used the real windows. I had to cover them in one set, and I had to build them a fake light behind them. Otherwise, we had to shoot into the night, and I do fake daylight in the hospital room. So
But
yeah,
yeah, we're still in a kind of like the island as the Lotus Eaters Island. It's still there's a miasma around everything at the island, and so everything is a certain color palette. But it's not
Um,
unlike a hospital palette, too.
right.
no,
Yeah.
You know.
And that's why I was wondering, because I was like, I honestly don't think it would be that hard to find a hospital that matched the colored palette, because they always go
Oh
for
no,
like,
no,
but
no.
but but shooting in a hospital is no fun.
right.
It's
No,
busy.
they don't want us there. If someone's
No.
having a heart attack, it's like, oh,
Yeah, and then Greg, you've got a visual style in here that I really liked with the tight angles. And the first one that I noticed that was very dreamlike was when Michaela and Simone are about to go on their run. And
Yeah,
then they're inside, but then it just transitions to a close up where you don't even fully realize that they're outside until they
yeah,
turn to go and run.
yeah,
And I watched it like 2 or 3 times, just that scene. And because I didn't know a full layout of the house at this time, I wasn't sure if like this just opened up to the beach or not. But then when I watched it before this interview just right now, I was like, oh, now I see that they're like transitioned outside. But that was just such a cool feel, and obviously very reminiscent of like being lured by a siren.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the idea is like there's a gap in time suddenly, right? Like it's like you just sort of like don't remember, you realize how you got somewhere. And those were cues
Hmm.
were in Molly's script as well. Like there's the one late in later the episode, the one that Zoe shot where after Devin has her experience with Michaela, she suddenly wakes up in a car and she's off on a girls' day with her friends,
Hmm.
and like hours have gone by. And this is a deliberate idea that we want to extend on the show. And so Nikki and I talked about this could be the perfect way to do that. Also because we don't want to go through all this thing of going down the stair, all it's like this, we don't need to see all this travel. The idea is to be what this is a perfect chance to bring that concept into it again and just be mesmerized. Because at that moment she's saying like, I couldn't imagine my world without you. It's like, whoa. And then like, yeah. And then boom, we're somewhere else because, like being a bit under the spell, being mesmerized is a bit like that experience. So this was like the first time we tried that. And it was early in the shoot too. It's like, let's just test this concept and see how it goes. Because it
Yeah.
did seem like the right time to use it. And it did it notably make like, wait, you might go like, wait a second, are they on the outside now? And like we
Hmm.
even toyed with should we focus on them running away or not? And it was quite effective. It was a good intro to that experience.
Greg did a great job of melding our set with the location, and
Yeah.
we had a pretty good backdrop made of it too. The
Yeah,
Hmm.
perspective was pretty good.
Greg, I'm glad you brought up that scene. I know that was that Zoe. I forgot her last name. She was the
Zoe
DP for
White,
that episode. Okay, Zoe
Zoe
White.
White. Yeah,
Yes. I know that she shot that, but that was definitely a very powerful scene. Noticing, like the lights subtly darken as Michaela approaches Devin, and then
yeah.
the kind of like that match cut into the car, and then like the spiral gobos looked like going around in there, and then the
Yeah,
slow motion
yeah.
singing.
The caustic reflections of water. I mean, this is something that
Yes.
like we had all discussed in prep before, and like when Zoe and Q just went and took that ball and ran with it. You know what I mean? And
For me, I was wondering, is that the like one of the last of those dreamlike scenes in there? Because it kind of felt like there was a lot in the first 3 episodes, and then it almost felt like when the mystique of Michaela's character was gone, and you like could you were starting to learn the truth about her,
yeah,
and like also like her super flaws. It seems like those types of like time gaps like just
well,
kind of faded.
well, because I think also the scenes don't support like 'cause the scenes aren't about that. The next scene that really comes up is in the finale, and it's between Simone and Peter. Because then
Hmm.
that's the one where we sort of see it happening with two other characters, and it's sort of an equal parts. It's kind of like a magician's trick, as a contract between the audience and the magician. You want to you agree to be fooled, and therefore you need to participate. And the same way, when both of them are confronted by these kind of like bad situations, like Peter is thinking like Kevin Bacon's character is like, I'm going to get divorced again. He's having a bit of a panic attack because I'm repeating this pattern. It's a terrible thing. And then this sudden, vision he has of her, and she's also like, I need to get out of here. I need to, that she's both, and they both kind of like they're both equally in the sort of context of like, I just felt compelled to do this, right? And so they do it. They sort of like, in a way, they do it to each other and to themselves, and that's sort of the idea. That's the last time you see that, and that's sort of the idea, is to show that sequence from not being a Michaela has the power of everybody, but it's like this is how it happens. It's sort of like a little bit of a self. It's a little bit of a self, hypnosis in some ways between the two of them.
I want to get back to some of the design of the house, because there's a lot of interesting artwork throughout there. I spot a wooden horse. Is that, alluding to the Trojan horse?
Michaela collects people. We wanted the house to be kind of like a show house, a museum. She collects people. She's into nature. And this was a place to kind of, I think we've all been to certain people's homes, and we walk into a house and we go, oh, that's interesting. When you just see something that's like, okay, what is that? Is that a giant rhinoceros foot in the corner? So it's all for show, and it's all part of the menagerie, part of the collection idea.
That's interesting. And then I'm so bad with character names. Glenn Howerton's character in there, Simone's boyfriend. I'm not sure if you guys remember the character name. In his home, he's got a bunch of arcade games. And is that
that's your finance, bro. That was my little like, come on, he has it's a summer home too, right? Like, I have an arcade game. I'm not a finance bro, but like, he's immature, and so that was just a little nod to that.
Gotcha.
And like, we're also in these big empty summer homes, and it's so easy. He's a bit of nautical because he has a yacht and things like that. So it's just a little bit of character, just a little bit of like, he's immature but mature. He might be the sweetest one there, kind of.
Yeah. Even though he's totally clueless in other types of things of the
Yes,
nuance of the
he's
human
totally
being.
clueless.
He's clueless, but it's not malevolent. He's just kind of like a bit of adult in some ways. Like, I mean, I can't remember. I think Glenn described him as I can't remember.
Yeah.
It was in that way. He's not like a malevolent character. He's just kind of clueless and kind of and self-centered in his own childish way. That everything is like about him. But not in an evil, nasty way.
Yeah.
You're always searching when you're doing like a vacation home. How do we give a little bit of personality, but not be too much? Because also guys don't decorate, right? I mean, the decoration is a chair and a gaming console and TV in a bar. So how do we give him a little bit of, where he's coming from?
Sure. When I saw that, I was like, I'm not sure if maybe you put that there to like, just kind of like, he's a player, he goes there every summer and then just,
I'm sure
gets with a different woman and that's it.
I would have put it in the bedroom if I could.
Yeah, the bedroom didn't have much room.
I wanted to have a whole hallway of it. Like, if that house had a hallway, like Michaela's hallway, like a column, I would have loved to have had just even good vintage stuff, like the space games from the 70s. I would have loved, he would have collect that.
Yeah. You guys incorporated a lot of mirrors in this show, and I was wondering if you guys could speak to the significance of that.
Well, in history of Sirens is that they're kind of vain, and they always had reflective mirrors. Now, that wasn't in the Greek. That was like later in the 1400s when you see paintings of sirens by Italians and the French. Someone said they're always looking at their reflection. They're always, and also mirrors, right, Greg? They're just great to shoot through.
Yeah.
And we had fun with designing. We had as many as we could, many reflective surfaces. The one in the bedroom that's made up of kind of like darts was fun to design. And it also is a split personality. When you look in a mirror in ancient times, they thought, I'm not really seeing myself. I'm seeing some kind of mystical, like, that's what I wish I look like, or there's a lot of coded messages in it. But it is a historical thing when you look at artwork of sirens in the 1400s to present day.
Right.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Because mirrors distort, right? Because mirrors is a reverse image, and so then in history, it's like that's another side of me, or it's another part of me, or it's some other bit. And there's a couple of reflection shots that I really like that are actually not just even with glass, because there's tons of glass in the house too that also reflects. So we sometimes would use that for reflection. It's a chance to sort of see the other side of a character visually, which reminds us of like, yeah, there's a lot going on with this person. Like there's more than one side to Michaela. She seems pretty one dimensional at the beginning until you realize that she's much more complicated. and she's in a self-designed architecture herself. So
Yeah. And then Greg, what about the scene when Michaela and Simone are laying in bed talking to each other? I was told that you shot that with half silvered mirrors so that
yeah.
the actors could stay performing at the same time. Like, can you break that down?
Yeah, that was the irony. Yeah, that was the use of a mirror. It's like an off-camera use of a mirror. So in the sort of siren-y scenes and looking at each other, their actors are playing to the camera. They're just looking at the lens, and usually the scenes are very short. So it's a short scene that can just easily remember their lines and look at the camera for 2 lines. So that's be quite easy to do. This is a longer conversation, and it seemed like a moment during the middle of it that might be nice to have that point of view within that scene. So we shot it conventionally with the two of them in bed. So Michaela slips into bed. It's a bit of an emotional intrusion in Simone's space. But the idea of doing a whole scene that way with all the dialogue seemed like it'd be nice if they could see each other, because then they can overlap the dialogue. Like if we cross shoot coverage often, sometimes with two actors, we shoot at both sides at the same time. It allows them to overlap their action. You get good continuity. They can also, they're not worried about separating the dialogue in terms of audio. And this scene seemed like, well, what if it might be nice to do that scene this way. So the way to accomplish that was similar to what Ken Burns would use in his documentaries or other ways, or it's basically a teleprompter. So it's a teleprompter. It's a half silver mirror. So if you're giving a speech, you look through a piece of glass and see the audience, and you also see your speech laid over top of a piece of glass. When they see you, they just see through the glass. In this case, what we had was two cameras, each one looking at each actor. So they were sitting in bed like this. So what we did was I took two separate pieces of bed, put them like 45 degrees, and you have a mirror here. So they're looking into a mirror at each other, right? So like 45 degrees, but behind each mirror are cameras looking at them exactly. So when they see a reflection, the lens is looking right at them. That way they're performing to the other actor, but we're seeing as if we are the other character. And that way it's simultaneous. It was a tricky thing to set up, lying down 45 degrees and you get two small pieces of bed and match the bedding and kind of the background and do that off to the side, not on the real set, but right next to it, and do the similar lighting so it all kind of blend together. But it was a nice way because then they could really act, and it looked ridiculous as a setup. You had to crawl into this sheet and onto the floor. But then once they got in there, they're like, oh, it's like, oh, hi. And they could see each other, and it was really great. And they were, I mean, I have to, hats off to Julianne Moore and Millie for being game for this little idea. I pitched them with the concept. They're like, okay, Greg seems like he's clever enough. We're trying some weird things. It's kind of fun. And then, but what's great when they could play the scene, it provided a really intimate experience. You felt like you're in bed with them. Like you really feel like you're in that personal space. So it worked very well.
Wow. I really hope you have behind the scenes photos or videos of that. Cause like, it's so hard to imagine like what this looks like. Mirrors always like, it's a mind mess.
Yeah, hopefully there's a good description, but I do have some. I think there might be something in ASC magazine coming out with that. I think I've got some diagrams of that in there.
Cool. Another scene at the end of episode 1 when the bird flies into the window. I couldn't help but feel like I was getting flashbacks of the Lost World with Julianne Moore and the slowly cracking glass, and I wasn't sure if you guys were also feeling the same way.
Yeah. I know that scene.
Yeah, it took me right back to my childhood. How was that scene shot? Like, it definitely seems like there's some visual effects going on in there, and I'm just kind of curious, like, how that all came together.
I mean, John built an amazing bedroom for Michaela that was on the stage that was didn't exist in the real house. Obviously, we did not kill a real Barnaby. Barnaby did not die. So Barnaby is a CG bird that flies through glass. And it's a combination of using some real glass for reflection, and the moment she's close to it, we have no glass. It's done in post. But the tricky part is Julia has to act in slow motion to a bird coming through. So we sort of rehearse where the bird will go. We put the stuffed dead Barnaby on the ground, so she has something to react to when she looks that way. And it's just a question of getting the rehearsal to we're all like, she and the camera are following an imaginary non-existent bird, to its doom and reacting accordingly. We did continue the shot, pick up the bird in the same shot, but it's sort of a combination of rehearsing it, figuring out the best way to shoot it, sort of shooting it without it, and then putting it in later. I know it sounds simple, but it's also tricky for actors to follow imaginary objects, especially with something so horrific.
That makes sense. And then, John, when you were talking about the location and you were talking about the stair set gets highlighted a lot in the show. Did you do anything to that stair set, or was that something that you...
No, I think at one point we wanted to clad it in older wood to make it feel more timeless. but the house would not let us. People own the house because of various issues. We added lights to it, and I think we just adjusted the bottom.
Yeah, we just repaired the bottom. We repaired the bottom few steps, so we're getting more waterlogged, and we were like shored up a couple spaces that we're not going to sit up to the traffic of the 100-person crew going up and
Yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah. But it was, it was not, I mean, Greg had to walk up and down it all the time. It was pretty arduous.
Millie running up the stairs and stuff like that. Poor Megan crawling up there in the middle of the night in a wetsuit.
Yeah. We did add lights to it. That was it. We just had lights to call it out at
It
night.
was a great metaphor for so many things in the story, and it was so perfect. I mean, the fact that John found this incredible location, it's quite amazing.
So when the show ends, we have the shot of Simone with the sunset. Is that something where it's like every day you guys are just kind of like waiting for the sunset? Like, is today going to be our day to shoot it? Or did you guys schedule a day, or is that visual effects, or did the weather just cooperate?
That was a weather cooperating. That was the day we had to shoot it, and we got a perfect sunset that day for those
Wow.
three shots. For the behind her, the close up. That's the close up shot first, then the behind the her shot with the wide shot, and the drone is shot at the same time as the crane shot, just because the sunset's a short experience. We did not have the best of weather during the whole shoot. There's a lot of stuff in the first beginning of the shoot where it was we were scouting. It was perfectly sunny. We're shooting. It's cloudy. Like Julianne Moore's first day was drizzly, and every day we're hoping for a good low sun in the afternoon, but the sun facing, getting a sunset from the view of the house is amazing. We only got it a few times. And I was so grateful that that was the one day we got almost one of the most perfect ones. And at that
Oh
particular
yeah.
moment, we planned for it carefully. We planned to be able to try and shoot it in the efficient way. And the 45 minutes we have for the light is low enough. And it worked out beautifully. And I'm so happy. And Millie's amazing. It's something great about an incredible performance in a tiny window of time. So yeah, it turned out really well.
The color in her eye was amazing. The sparkle,
Yeah,
light, it made her otherworldly.
yeah. And her little almost tear welling up. She's
Yeah.
quite incredible.
John, I would be remiss if I didn't say that clearly you're killing it on The Last of Us.
Oh,
But
thanks.
I'm
I,
also
I only did the first season.
first season. Yeah, well, so that's the thing is I actually don't still watch The Last of Us because I only made it like 4 episodes in, and I have a tryptophobia, that thing where I can't stand like holes in skin, and this kind of does the same thing to me where I just like I literally feel ill when I'm looking at these zombie
Yeah.
creatures.
Oh
But what
yeah,
I did see
they were
was very good.
gross. They
Yeah.
were gross. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Did you play the game?
I would have played the game if it were on Xbox because I don't have a PlayStation, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I'm always interested what people think who actually, are game devotees.
Yeah. Before we wrap this up, I want to ask you both because you both have won an Emmy or Emmys. Does that do anything to your career? Like, does it feel like getting jobs is easier, or is that just something where you're like, all right, sweet, I got this, accolade under my belt?
I do not have an Emmy. I have
Oh, really?
I have an ADG award, though. I think I've been nominated like 6 times, but
Hmm.
but no, I don't have an Emmy. I have an ADG award, and I can say that for me, that was more fulfilling because that was my peers recognizing work.
Mm.
Having been to the Emmys many times, I don't know what it does. I mean, I guess anything that keeps that helps a door open to help
Yeah.
you work on interesting things is always good.
Mhm.
That's the only way I look at it personally.
Yeah.
Any award.
Yeah, I find it like one. I'm really proud of the work I did on Watchmen, and it was nice for me. It was also acknowledgement to get an Emmy for cinematography is an acknowledgement of the incredible team that we had too. So I felt very proud that the show got acknowledged as much as
Mhm.
anything else. Um, awards. If anything that reminds people you are out there is useful, I find. It's that kind of thing, like, oh, and that strangely enough is one of the most important things for like to say, oh, remember, it's like, oh, this person, think of something new. Because most often you end up working with people you've worked with before, or that they've heard of you, or worked with people directly, worked with them, because that's usually how the reference would sort of work. Like,
Mhm.
you need to know you well enough to consider you. There's lots of incredible cinematographers out there. It's not like this. I mean, it's not a tier group where people are better than everyone else. It's also like it's finding the right fit.
Yeah.
And if an award can help get your name in the conversation and think like, oh, what about this person? I just saw this work, and but fine, that could be helpful, I guess. But it's hard to
Mhm.
really quantify. You're not going to win an Emmy unless a lot of people seen the show, just because the volume of work out there, people have seen it. So if even to be considered for it or having people talk about it is like an indication that enough people are seeing the show, and that's really exciting. Like getting the work seen and getting the show seen and enjoyed is the biggest. That's the biggest, most important thing ever. So just to get to talk to you about it. Look, we're talking about the work we did on this project together, and hopefully people are enjoying it. That's very rewarding.
Sirens was a great show. And I'm also happy because there's so many shows that come out that run way too long. But like when it's something like this, a limited series, I feel like it just gets packaged perfectly for the audience. And, I think you guys both did a phenomenal job. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
My pleasure.